Welcome to Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson, the podcast that celebrates the people, places, and stories that make Rocky and the wider central Queensland community extraordinary. I firmly believe we're sitting on a golden goose in this region, and I love meeting the people who are doing the quiet work behind the scenes to keep the community thriving. They run our sports clubs, they organise our charities, they support the people who are lost in the system, and they volunteer their time so generously. And I feel like the luckiest person in the world when someone shares their story with me privately. And now I'm privileged to bring their stories and achievements to you, the listeners of Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson. Sometimes they wonder why they were asked, thinking that what they're doing and what they've done is not that big of a deal. And I can hand on heart tell you that it absolutely is. Other times, my guests are ecstatic to be asked and they look forward to sharing a piece of their Rocky and Central Queensland story. Thank you for listening in. I truly appreciate you being here. Today's guest is Lance Watson. Now, Lance wears a heck of a lot of hats around the Rockhampton region and, of course, on the Capricorn coast as well. And I'm really excited to have Lance on the podcast today as a guest because he brings such a wealth of experience of community service to the Rocky region while also working a full-time job. And Lance, honestly, the number of hats you wear is incredible. Lance is the group leader of the Mount Archer Scout group. I know Lance very well through Scouts, and Lance taught me a lot of what I know in Scouts as well because I started at the Mount Archer Scout group. In addition, you're heavily involved in Crime Stoppers in the Rockhampton region, as well as being a Justice of the Peace and being involved in that committee. You're also the current president of the Rotary Club of Rockhampton, and that is not a small job. And just another one that comes to mind is motocross. You do a lot of work with the motocross club and a lot of safety related things and marshalling. Just so many things happening for you, Lance. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you very much, Nyree, for inviting me. Yes, and I can certainly tell you a lot of stories about your uncles as well. So,
Yes, they don't actually hold back. So they
no,
do share them quite openly. There's no secrets in that Wooler family.
that's right.
Yeah. So before we really get stuck into it, though, because you do have so much to offer, I want to ask you one question first, which is if you could be an expert at anything at all in the world, what would it be and why?
Geez. Well, there's lots of things you'd like to be expert in. I suppose we're experts in everything, but master of none. So, to become an expert in time travel physics, there you go. That's something different.
Interesting. Hmm.
Mainly, so I can use it to finally settle some debates about whether going back in time, if you fix one thing, would it actually break everything? However, there's also a downside to that one that, this could help, but I probably couldn't stop myself from saying awkward things. And although knowing me, I'd probably interrupt myself and make it even worse. So a bit of fun there.
That is a bit of fun. I love it. Interesting one. If you could go back and just change one thing, would it break everything? Yes.
Yeah, I love watching all those movies and that, and they go back in time. If you alter this, this would happen. I think, maybe
Mm.
if I go back, then I could be a billionaire now.
Yes, that's it. Wouldn't that be nice? You could go and get all of the lotto numbers.
Oh, definitely.
Yes. So I'm really curious to know and find out a lot more about you. Favorite things on this podcast is interviewing people that I know quite well, but then learning so much more about them and their life and their journey to date. But I'm really curious to know what were those key moments for you and those key people from your early life that really shaped who you are today? Because from my perspective, who you are today is someone that just gives and gives and gives and gives to your community and to the people around you. And there's just never seems to be a stop to what you'll do to help groups. So what were those moments and those key people in your journey?
Geez, we're going back a long time now. Maybe I'm still got to get that time machine and go back and
Yeah.
get that, because there is so many people, throughout your life that do influence you. As a child, of course, it's your family, to start with. We've got to look at our current lifestyle. I was brought up in the 60s, so that those were totally different times to what they are now.
Mm.
So our family the family business. Our family started a business in general carrying. My grandfather was using a horse and cart back in the late 1800s, and our business, the family business, went through then until the late 70s, early 80s, before the family gave that business away. So we certainly learnt a lot there. My Uncle Bob, he was an ex-serviceman, World War II, New Guinea. He certainly had a love of it for horses and property. So he had a small area out at Pink Lily, which is near the airport. We used to go swimming in the lagoons there. Had big influences with me, going out to the cattle sales and doing a lot of that type of stuff. It was really good. Other influences I had fighting Vietnam. I had uncles and my father in Korea. So watching and seeing and how they lived and what their values were. So that's where you get a lot of, of what your own values are from, and that will certainly become a way that I learnt and was influenced, from there. The other thing was back in the day, you could go out and play and it didn't matter where you went, just as long as you were home before the street lights come on. Otherwise, you get in a lot of trouble if you got home late.
That's, yeah, good stories, good family, good influence. That's fantastic. And yeah, to have so many inspirational people in your family and people who served, it's something to be quite proud of. And I personally know how much pride you take in Anzac Day in particular, especially like representing the Scouts, but every other group that you're a part of as well, and making sure that our young people remember and know what people like your uncles did for our country. So that legacy lives on.
It certainly does. And if it wasn't for the veterans, our lives would be totally different.
Mm,
We live a free and easy lifestyle,
mhm,
and for what they done for us. So
mm.
that was great. Yeah.
Yeah. So what inspired this journey of what you do today? So as someone who grew up in the 60s, it's now 2026. You work full time as a safety professional, but you wear so many hats in the community. And what inspired like that journey to go down that path, aside from your family and your uncles that you're a part of?
Yeah, I suppose it all comes back still again to your upbringing. It was the late 1800s when the grandfather started the businesses, and that then what we had to look at there was, would the business that started back then survive? In the current
Mm,
times. And those current times I'm talking about now is the 70s and 80s. They were general carriers. So they picked up stuff from the railways, parcels, and took them to all the stores around town where they delivered them. Then as time progressed, a new generation of carriers were coming in. They were undercutting the services because people wanted their goods a lot quicker. So
mm,
I think with that and seeing a business that had run for so long, it would have been very difficult to maintain that business, especially it's only a family business. It was run by my
mm,
grandfather, my father and mother. My mother was the
mm,
first female general carrier, around,
mm,
in that time. And she used to, carry lots of heavy parcels and things like that. And they used to do furniture deliveries. So with seeing that, I thought, well, we've got to work in the community as well, and help.
mm,
So basically, knew it would be time, to move and look at what could I do to help. So with knowing all that, that then led me into my own journey and trying different types of jobs. I started off basically pushing trolleys, at Woolies at Allenstown in the 1978.
mhm,
So it's not like the Woolies we have now, that's for sure. And again, you're working with people in the community there. You get your regular customers. The other jobs I was doing was packing the groceries. So I'd stand at the end of the line and pack the groceries as they come in. You'd talk to all the oldies that come in, and you get to find out their stories and that people needed help. So I just become a very helpful individual, I suppose, over those years. I was working a 46 and a half hour week for $68 a week,
mm,
so those were easier times. At 15, I was offered a role as an assistant manager. I declined that one and thought I needed to get out a little bit further. I progressed then to Queensland Rail.
mm,
So it was great at the time. It was booming. I started there as a lad porter. So I used to take all the luggage off the train and put the luggage on the train, take deliveries or parcels off the trains and so on. I then moved on in that area to become a night officer, again going out into the rural areas and relieving the station masters and station mistresses in different areas. Worked there with that service. I came back to Rocky and worked as a shunter. A shunter is a person who puts trains together, and
Yeah,
that
right.
was back in the earlier days where. Well, now we see that the trains that are together with those big couplings. Before that, we actually had hooks and had to throw couplings over those hooks. And so lean over buffers, in between wagons.
Mm.
So that was a pretty dangerous type of job.
Mm.
I had a few mates seriously injured with doing that job. And I thought, and that's where I suppose in those days I started to get my interest in safety, and that started to progress through. So from doing the shunting, then I thought, nah, this is a bit too dangerous for me as well. So I decided, oh well, instead of putting the trains together, why not be up the front of the train and be driving it? So then I moved over into the locomotive section and worked as an engine cleaner to start with. So yes, we had to clean engines by hand, and then as a fireman and then trainee driver over the years. So
Yeah,
that
wow.
certainly moved along a little bit. So in amongst all that, around 83, while I was still there, I ended up, I got married. So then I had a new influencer in my life. So I've had, Jenny we've been together now for the last 46 years. So I've got a fantastic influencer there.
So
So
that's a long journey. Congratulations.
yeah. So with that, then she got dragged around the rest of the state with everything else that we wanted to do. So we went up to Serena to do the sugar season, do what they call the crush, and
Mm.
then moved over into the coal trains at
Mhm.
Gillallen. So that was pretty good. Worked there on the coal trains and the duplication of the coal lines where they laid rail, then electrification of those lines as well. So that
Mm.
was some great experience. Before I got then, we had to get classed and move away. So I moved up to Cloncurry. That was where I
Mhm.
got classed as a fireman, and that's where we had our first child. Reve was born up in Cloncurry, and in Cloncurry, then that's where again I was very community minded, both through scouting, of course, and
Mm.
with the ambulance service. The ambulance service was known as the Queensland Ambulance Transport Brigade, and it's not like the
Mhm.
service we know now. It basically was an ambulance vehicle, basic equipment, and we used to have to get up and do what they have the person treated in the back of the ambulance and to the hospital within the hour. And they used to call that the golden hour.
Wow.
So we were more a transport brigade. Most of the times we would call drivers or bearers. I worked with that as in an honorary capacity whilst I was
Mhm.
working with Queensland Rail. So when they needed a driver or whatever, then we used to jump in and drive for the ambulance officers who used to be in the back.
Mhm.
Now, they aren't the paramedics that we know of today either. So
Mm.
you didn't have the drugs and everything else that they currently have now. So I did that for a little while, working up there. And then I thought, well, I'm helping the community even further by being in the ambulance, so why not join it?
Mm.
So I then joined the Queensland Ambulance Transport Brigade down in Winton, where, and this is really scary, because I went over with a driver's license and a senior first aid certificate, and that's
Mhm.
how I started in the ambulance service.
Yeah.
I was the game to go on then and get further training, of course,
Mm.
become a qualified ambulance officer over the
Mhm.
time. From Winton, we had 55,500 square kilometres to look after. So we looked after from Winton nearly to the Northern Territory border, all the way
Wow.
up Caulfield, nearly up to Hewenden, all the sheep stations and that there. And the majority of the time we had to drive those areas. We didn't have choppers. We had
Mm.
the RFDS that we could rely on every now and again. And of course, communications was really interesting as well.
Mm.
And of course, we operated as one person, not as multiple people that come out. So
Wow.
then, of course, you're looking at having someone else drive the vehicle whilst you're in the back treating the injured person whilst you travel to hospital. And that could be for many hours. So that was really, that was a really education. So Winton took back to Serena. I worked in Serena for a few years with the ambulance, then moving up to Moranbah. The
Mhm.
Queensland Ambulance Transport Brigade were basically a committee-run organisation. So not like today where it's full government.
Mm.
Government did provide some funding towards the ambulance services. Back in those days, we actually did subscriptions. So we
Mhm.
actually went door to door and collected subscriptions to pay for the services, to pay our wages. I've
Mm.
run many a chook raffle in an outback pub and used to run ticket boards and the old tickets to win a prize out in the streets on a Saturday morning, up the streets to raise funds.
Mm.
That was really, really great fun as well, because you got to speak to everyone. Everyone got to know everyone in those, which is
Mm.
absolutely fantastic. So around early 1990s was when the Queensland Ambulance Transport Brigade turned into the Queensland Ambulance Service. So during the last few years, I suppose, in the ambulance service, I ended up working with the unions to fight for the paramedical studies to get officers trained to the level that they are today. Where previously, before, as I say, we carried no drugs back in the earlier day, and we were travelling hours, and the most we could give someone was happy gas, Antonox. So what you might get at the dentist, or they give them the happy gas as
Mm.
well. And that's all we had, as well as providing, basic care. So with that, we continued on to progress to getting the paramedical studies, and of course the
Mhm.
change from Queensland Ambulance Transport Brigade to the Queensland Ambulance Service of what we have to,
Mm.
which is a fantastic service that they work for. So that's been part of the journey. I've got a long journey. I can keep talking about
Mm.
these and give you
No,
many
I
stories.
love it. Yeah. It must fill you with such pride to be a part of something so significant, like to take something from the Queensland Ambulance Transport Brigade to the Queensland Ambulance Service, and in the middle of that advocate alongside
Yeah,
unions for, the paramedic science that we have today, where people go and do their degrees as well as on the
yeah,
job training. Yeah, they're incredibly talented and smart people that come out of those degrees. And of course, everyone who worked, their journey was different to get there.
yeah. Yep, and the great thing about it as well, they've also managed to go through to gain their registrations. So, just like nurses, they've got their
Mm.
registration, which is absolutely fantastic.
Mm.
And it's great to see the progression that is certainly done. So after that, after my sessions there with that community work, I left the ambulance service and came back to Rockhampton then to study, and this is where I progressed on then into my safety roles and careers, where I come back to go to uni and undertake some studies to get my safety qualifications. I went on to gain minor qualifications with safety, and then I actually started in metalliferous mining with the Nyree Quarry, which is
Mhm.
a open hard rock drill and blast operation, where I looked after the Nyree Quarry, and I had 4 concrete plants. So I looked after Central Queensland concrete and quarries, and that was through the old ready mix that went from
Mhm.
ready mix to Wholesome, Cemex, and then Rinker. So they had a few name changes as well. So I worked there for a little while. Whilst there as well, still continuing on my community work course with doing my JPs. As a Justice of the Peace, I taught many JPs people to become JPs. I was on the chair there for many years, and as a trainer and as well. So from the my metalliferous mining days, I thought, wanted to get back into government.
Mm.
So from there, I went to jail. I did 7 years in jail.
I love how you say that. It surprises the heck out of new volunteers at Scouts, because there is no way in the world you would be a Scout leader if you were on the wrong side of that jail.
That's right. Yeah, no, I went into their safety. I was a safety advisor with Queensland Corrective Services for 7 years, and
Yeah.
also a senior advisor with the Department of Community Safety, where I operated out of Kedron down in Brisbane for a few months as well. So that certainly gave me a lot of experience, within the safety area,
Mm.
advising there.
Oh,
With
it's funny.
with the 7 years I've done, I'm hoping that I get time off for time served. So
I can't imagine you doing anything illegal that required you to go to actual jail for 7 years.
I think my wife thinks so at sometimes.
Mm.
But currently now, yes, I've been out of jail now for the last 13, well, close on 13 years. I'm now working with Queensland Health, of course,
Mm.
in safety, where I'm, working with the nurses and staff and consumers to help them stay safe within their hospital systems. I monitor, of course, all our new facilities and construction work that's going on, providing
Mhm.
advice through our infrastructure department units, and because we have an organisation as our main contractors is Health Infrastructure Queensland. So they're building all our new stuff up there, which is going to be absolutely fantastic once they get that finished and built, especially our new cardiac hybrid unit as well. So people don't have to go down to Brisbane to
Mm.
receive the treatments, which would be fantastic. I keep coming back to people. I keep helping people.
And how long have you been a member of the Rotary Club? Like that, being the president of a Rotary Club is no small undertaking. Alongside, of course, I know what's involved in being a group leader at a scout group, which is
Mhm.
a massive responsibility. But yeah, how long have you been a member of Rotary?
I've been a member of Rotary probably on and off for 10 or so years.
Mm.
It's been great. It's basically for business people, provide funds for the community. The Rotary Club of Rockhampton started the Rocky River Run. That
Mm.
was our club. It was done, Terry Logue, who's since left us, he started that. And that was basically to get funds and that for youth mental health. So
Mhm.
that's how that all started there through the Rotary Club of Rockhampton.
Mm.
So this year has been 100 years of the Rotary Club of Rockhampton, formed in Queensland, and we've been running for 100 years. We've
Mm.
had some celebrations. I've opened the time capsule. I think I've discovered another time capsule that's floating around that we have to have a look at to actually see if there's going to be anything there. And I'm currently got to advertise. So if anyone has any articles that they may wish to place in a time capsule, I'll be hoping to try and put them down by the end of July and to reset it.
Mm.
So please feel free to contact me should you wish to put a message to a family member that you want to might say how wonderful they are, and they can read about it 25 years later. So it'll be a surprise to them.
Yeah, maybe we should put a recording of this podcast on a USB, and maybe there'll still be USBs in 25 years, or maybe USBs will be like the floppy disk of today. None of us can actually use a floppy disk.
I think they're nearly getting that way now. Yeah, with the,
Mm,
with the way things
possibly.
are going. So
Mm.
yeah, we'll have to have a look at that technology and definitely do that. Uh, Then everyone can have a good laugh about what we looked like back in those days.
I'll still be here. I'm sure you'll still be here in 25 years' time.
Yeah, I've got my wheelie walker on lay-by now, so we'll see how it goes.
You do not.
Yeah.
And at the motocross, you do a lot of safety related things, don't you, for motocross? Like you give them a lot
Oh,
of guidance and advice.
yeah, I do. Yeah, I suppose a representative for Motorcycling Queensland as an official. There are a lot
Yep.
of the clubs that I go to. I've done stewarding on the day, clerk of the course, scrutineering. So the
Mm.
clubs get me back now, and I do a lot of scrutineering for the clubs. So that's
Mm.
looking at the bikes, prior to racing. They
Mm.
do self scrutineering now, so they actually have to look at the bikes themselves, make sure the bikes are safe, and we just randomise the scrutineering as well on top of that.
Mhm.
There's very little we pick up because everyone is very, knowledgeable about their bikes and what they need to have. So
Mm.
they certainly look after that. We've just had a fantastic non-competitive weekend out at the caves called the Ride More, which
Mhm.
was done by MX Store, and it was a fantastic weekend. So if anyone's looking at riding motorbikes, the best place to ride motorbikes is with a club. Go and join a
Yes.
club. They have the facilities, they have the insurances.
Mm.
So think about where you ride.
And they have the community too. Hey,
Oh,
like
most definitely.
that's one thing that I don't think some people see the value of, or they haven't experienced the value of it. You know, when you're a part of something, particularly in a volunteer capacity, you really become part of a community. And it might be a community of people that you never would have engaged with in ordinary life, whether it be friend circles or family or workplace. But volunteer organizations give you that opportunity to connect with people from every single walk of life.
Most definitely. And the big
Mm.
thing is, we know everyone loves to do things, but also too, we really need people to step up and become volunteers and to jump in those positions to
Mm.
help out. You get just as much enjoyment, with filling a
Mm.
position and working in a position, and your kids are still out there riding and everything else, but it helps keep that momentum going because it's very hard, as we all know. A lot of people won't step up and do because they think they're going to do the wrong thing. Well, we'd rather
Mm.
you step up, and if you do the wrong thing, hey, that's a learning. We'll get around that.
Yeah.
But we need those people in those positions so we can keep these things rolling. It just doesn't happen by itself. We need those people,
Mm.
and there's a lot of people that work in the background that don't come
Mhm.
out front, and I suppose I'm one of those. I'd rather be out the back doing stuff to keep things rolling than being up in the front. Even doing this now, I'd rather be
Yeah.
behind the wall instead of in front of the wall.
You have nailed the purpose of this podcast. It is to find the people like yourself who are out there doing those things in the background. Like, you were at Sione Park with me last weekend. You've probably had a big weekend this weekend. I know you've got things coming up the next couple of weeks, and you're always out there in the background. If someone needs a hand, you're there. And the purpose of this podcast is to grab those people and go, look at what you're doing. Like, it's so good. And there's so many not-for-profits, community groups, organizations, clubs, committees around town doing incredible work being run by people just like yourself, Lance. That's exactly why I wanted to do this podcast.
We're not doing it for,
Mm.
for all the bells and whistles. We're just doing it because we enjoy doing it.
There's not enough bells and whistles.
Yep.
Yeah, yep. Yeah. Anyone who's volunteering for years and years and years in their whole life just to feature on a podcast for 45 minutes is getting it wrong. No, so funny, so funny. No, good. You probably already know this, but my dad was a fireman in the railway. We
Yeah.
spent a bit of time living in Serena. And that's actually why I was born in Mackay. Even though I'm a Rocky person through and through and love Rocky and my whole family's from here, my dad was working in Serena at the time. And of course, the Serena hospital didn't deliver babies. So I had to go and be born in Mackay. But that's okay. I'll accept that. Rocky's still my home.
Yeah.
Always will be. The mean to you. We know what community contribution means to you, but this particular town.
Well, being bred and born here, I just keep coming back. It's Rocky's. It's a big country town. It's been a fantastic environment to bring up kids, and for some reason I keep coming back here. Rocky has so much potential. Rocky has some fantastic history, and I just love the place for the history. A lot of people now won't see them, but when they were there, I used to do a lot of fishing down on the old wharves. Now, the old wharves used to run for nearly 2 miles along the edge of the Fitzroy River. And, from the sand wharf all the way down to the rocks that were placed down the bottom, as Rocky was, it was a port city, back in the day. The Walter Reed buildings, are there. There were wool stores, and I think one of them still has the internal steam lifts in it that they used to take the wool from the lower grounds to the up to the upper floors. The wide streets. The wide streets were for the bullock drays to pull the bales around so they could turn their teams around. We still trip over rail lines that'll start popping up in the middle of the road. We've had the Puri steam tram that used to run all over Rocky, and a lot of those rails have been taken out as well. So, the history of the place. I just love coming back to Rocky. So, it's just like a moth to a light,
Yeah. I was talking to someone just a couple of days ago as well, and it was really early in the morning, and we're looking out across the river from the ABC building, actually, and it's just stunning. Like, I don't think people realize what we have on offer here. It's a pretty incredible place. And then all of that history. And even if you want to learn more about the history, there's so many free resources that are available, as well as paid resources. Like, there's tours that you can do and learn even more. I was in the mall last night and I met up with someone who'd just been on a ghost tour. Like, they're amazing, those ghost tours that Phil does. Yeah, just much to offer. But we can both be Rocky tragics together, even I had to be born in Mackay. But won't forgive my parents for that. No, I'm kidding. Of course I will. So tell me, like, extensive career, extensive community service growing up here in Rocky, of course. And, obviously life doesn't come with, roses. It's not all roses in life. But tell me about, like, something that comes to mind for you, whether it's a significant challenge that you've had to overcome, or whether it's, one of your proudest moments, and how that has shaped the rest of your journey as you've continued on this life lessons. You know how we all have those moments in life that they're just game changers.
Yeah, geez. Biggest challenge, I suppose. Well, I'm getting older. That's probably one of our biggest challenges, and the changes that we're seeing in society. Having to try and keep up with the changes in technology. I've got a lot more programs that I've got to learn now at work, and we're getting younger ones that are coming in that have got more of an understanding. So, but then again, I am starting to sway towards AI. I'm starting to enjoy using AI. It's certainly helping to remind me what I'm supposed to be doing, and giving me some wonderful responses. I'd hate to have one that is totally personalised towards myself, because I think I could have some great debates with that.
You can force it to do that.
Yeah, I know. But but there's some of the biggest challenges, I suppose. Another challenge is and this is really hard. We have now is we've got such a diversity of youth, and understanding now and trying to be how best to be diplomatic in the way that we operate, not only with Scouts but with all kids,
Mm,
because they come with all sorts of things to us, and that's certainly challenging. And especially the amount of time that you have to spend, the extra time now that we're spending with our children, to
mm,
get them an understanding, or waiting until they've come down from a high to get them
mm,
to understand and to do what they need to do. I think I need to
mm.
go and do a course in child psychology, or something to get a bit more an understanding.
Mm.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do sit and think and wonder about the diversity in a classroom, in particular for
Mm,
teachers or even early childhood educators. And what about this? And what about this? With my limited exposure to young people, like I don't do Scouts as a paid job, of course, nobody does. But like we have those moments, on a weeknight with them or on a camp with them. And then you just sit back and go, wow, how does a teacher manage, say,
yeah.
25 to 30 young people, all with different levels of comprehension and needs and behaviors? And it is definitely different, and it can absolutely be challenging. And you and I are not early childhood educators, and we're not teachers. We just want the best for our young kids in Rocky.
Yeah,
Mm,
no, that's right. And, we'll do the best we possibly can, to get them
mm,
to achieve it. Sometimes it's only a phase that they're currently going through. We'll call it a
mm,
phase that
mm.
they go through, because some of those kids that we've had those challenges with have become fantastic students, and
Absolutely.
have had some fantastic achievements in their lifetime. So,
Mm,
it's up to us oldies to persevere and
mhm,
to learn, from that. And it can be very difficult as well,
mm,
especially when you look back at the way that you were brought up and how you were
mm,
treated, and so on. So you need to try and adapt and move forward with that. Some of the proudest moments, I suppose, there's been many over the years from, my own personal achievements and goals that I've achieved over time. And I've been quite surprised. My education, I suppose, I got as far as year
mhm,
10, and I had a choice at that. And I suppose we all have choices. And so I
mm,
thought, I'd wait until I get my results from my year 10. So I did that. I had a choice. If I got really good marks, then I'd go on and complete my senior, which I would have loved to have done. I would have loved to have done
mm,
years 11 and 12 and come out as a senior, or go to work. I was already working at the time, so I had jobs lined up everywhere, so that was fine. When my results come back, I thought, gee, work is a really good pathway.
mhm.
So from there, I went to work, and from work then, the way that I've moved through my career, the advancements that I've made there, and that's all from being educated on the job
Mm,
and going and doing other study as well. I have done other studies. I do have diplomas in quite a few different areas as well. And those diplomas I actually RPL'd. So it
mm,
wasn't that I had to be taught that, because I already knew what I was doing there, but I RPL'd to gain
mm.
those qualifications, because it's all from life experience. And that's something
Yeah.
to think about too for people, if they want to advance themselves or get a certification. Sometimes it's better to look at, I already know all this. Can I RPL it? Then RPL it,
Mm,
because it's far
mm,
beneficial for those persons to do that. Having my kids, watching them grow up. But Tristan and Reve have done some great stuff, throughout
mm,
their lives. Tristan's a leader with Scouts. Reve, we've got 3 beautiful grandsons
mm,
there. She's running her own business as well. Tristan's working, within organisations as well. So, and with
mm.
Scouts, and of course watching the grandkids achieve their goals and milestones. And I'll be heading down to St Brendan's actually on Tuesday for the Grandparents' Day, which will be our first grandson's his last year, because he's graduating this year.
Oh,
So
wow.
be going down for that. So so some great achievements there.
They must be really lucky. Or they probably don't realize it at the moment as young kids, but one day they'll realize how lucky they were to have such
Mm.
hands-on granddad and grandma and such community-focused grandparents as well. Like
Yeah.
I could imagine that the influence of you on your grandchildren and even your own children, because Tristan is a very long-term scout leader, volunteer, gives up a lot of time for scouts. And, just that influence from you, like similar to your uncles influencing you, the way you've influenced your children and your grandchildren, that'll be alive and well for, generations. What I'm curious to know because, as we've said before, life's not easy. It's not
Mm.
always fun and games to get up and go to work and go and volunteer and look after your family and be there for your wife and 46 or 47 years. What's the thing that keeps you moving forward, like getting up every day and committing to Rotary, committing to being available as a justice of the peace, sitting on the Crime Stoppers committee, doing your motocross stuff, doing your scout stuff? What's that thing that keeps you going?
Jeez, it gives you satisfaction to be able to do that. It gives you peace of mind. Knowing that you've certainly helped. Someone somewhere. It might be only
Mm,
small, but when you see that an individual out of the hundreds or whatever, and you see that one individual achieve, their
mm,
goals, it's great. So it's basically just continuing to provide that advice to those that are willing to listen, especially on life, in keeping
mm,
people safe, from harm.
mm,
As I say, watching your young people learn through doing and appreciating, that learning, watching those who have had the privilege of training through many courses that I've done, whether it's, through small business, as I operated with the Rockhampton Enterprise Centre for many years as the chair on the
mm,
board there.
mm,
And it was a training organisation teaching people to start small businesses, watching those businesses grow and become to what they are. And there are still quite a few operating today that
mm,
we worked with. Back in that day, teaching first aid. I was with St. John for many years. I was a superintendent for St. John and started a couple of the St. John volunteer sections around. So that was up in Moranbah and Serena. We started St. John Ambulance and teaching people first aid. That was great. Watching those ones to come through and become justices of the peace that I've trained. I still have people ring me today and asked for advice. I've got
mm,
this here. What should I be doing with that? What do I do with this?
mm,
Or we're having trouble with the Department of Justice. So that's fine. I said, I'll just ring them and talk to them or whatever I need to do to try and sort out particular issues.
mm,
Work health and safety. I work for a training company, a construction skills training company for a period of time teaching safety and watching those guys learn and understand how to look after themselves and others within the workplace,
mm,
giving them the skill to keep them and everyone safe, to watch everyone gain their own success through their own lives. And I think that's what
mm,
keeps me going. The time that I spent when I was in the ambulance service, with the ambulance service, we attend so many traumatic incidents, basically through those, and they do take a toll on us,
mm,
both professionally and personally. And there's many hard lessons,
mm,
that I learned from that. And we certainly take those into our own lives. So my outlook is basically is live life and take the time to spend it wisely with those around you. Work hard to actually earn the things you want and appreciate the effort. Take time to listen to your elders of the community who have worked hard to get where they are, as it takes hard work, time and dedication. And it's not something that you just get handed to you. It has to be earned.
mm,
And that's what really gets to me as well, because I've worked hard to get where I am,
mm.
and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I love that. I love that mantra as well and that advice for, people listening get successful overnight schemes out there and they're just not real.
No,
They're just not real. You have to work for what you want. Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
And I know I certainly appreciate all of the time that you give me, in Scouts and outside of Scouts. I definitely do appreciate all of the advice and the help that you give me. And you're always just a phone call away. I can imagine the impact that you've made for me as a volunteer. I'm so thankful and lucky that you took the time out to share your story and your journey and your lessons, and a little bit about how you juggle what you do and why.
Yeah, most certainly. Thank you very much for letting me come along. I'd like to share with the next generation, and
Mm,
that is stop and think.
mhm,
What do you want out of society and your own life? Don't expect to be given everything you want. This has to be earned. You
mm,
work for what you want. Remember that the older generation have worked to get where they are, and it's a long, hard road. But everyone has a chance and opportunity to get there. Sometimes it takes a little longer, to get there. Take what goes wrong and make it a life lesson. This is the way we learn. Look for people who are willing to mentor and support you. Be kind to one another and respectful. This will help build those relationships that will support you through your life.
That's a fantastic thought. Very deep, thought-provoking mantra and statement. All of the work that you do at Scouts is very, very much appreciated by all of the volunteers who work alongside you, like myself. And yeah, everything that you do in the community. It's been an absolute pleasure having you.
It's a pleasure being here, and I'm always open to anyone to contact me.
Thanks, Lance.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson, proudly brought to you by Marketing Unagency Co., the marketing team who do things very differently and who are determined to make the world of marketing less chaotic and far clearer for small businesses and community groups.